Okay, so it's been a while since I've done a Hokage role reversal, so here we go. Minato versus the Konoha Crush invasion. Now, just in case anyone watching decides to write this off, keep in mind that this particular what if will have some twists and turns in it. As in, I'm going to try and put Minato in the worst case scenario here, at least within the confines of the arc. For starters, obviously this is a Hokage role reversal, and because of this of course means Hiruzen is dead and not Minato. Also, just for the sake of making sure Naruto still has the Nine Tails chakra, we'll say that Kushina still dies in the Nine Tails attack, and that Naruto is still the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. Also, despite the fact that it's more likely that the Uchiha clan massacre would not have happened under Minato's rule as Hokage, for the sake of the invasion still happening, we'll also say that the Uchiha clan are not in this what if. Since I find it very unlikely that Orochimaru would feel like an invasion of the Leaf Village would go any better than it already did with the Uchiha clan and Minato still around. This of course means that Itachi will not be in this scenario either. And lastly, for the sake of seeing how Minato could handle the worst case scenario, we'll say that the Hidden Sand and the Hidden Sound's initial plan goes off like it was supposed to, which is where I'll start this off. As in, the Chunin exam's final rounds are still underway, and it's in the middle of the fight between Sasuke and Gaara. And Orochimaru is impersonating the Fourth Hokage Rasa, and the invasion is just about to begin. So, from what I can gather, I believe the initial plan for the start of the invasion was that at the signal, Gaara was said to transform into Shukaku right in there in the arena. And to be honest, I think this might actually result in everyone, if not mostly everyone in the stadium arena, dying. Maybe you could say that certain Jonin like Kakashi, Guy, and Asuma could be fast enough to save certain genin like Naruto, Sakura, Lee, and Shikamaru, but certain characters like Gemna and Sasuke might be killed since both of them were right where Gaara was at when he transformed. Now maybe you could say for the best case scenario that Gemna will be quick enough to get he and Sasuke away from Gaara as he's transforming in time, but if not, then they're both dead. So ultimately we have Shukaku in the arena and eventually trying to destroy the rest of the village, and then Orochimaru fighting Minato. Now, as far as Minato goes, I want you guys to bear with me, because considering certain things, some of the predicaments following probably won't happen. For example, I don't think Orochimaru would have the time to get Minato trapped into the barrier that the Sound 4 had made to trap Hiruzen. And even if they did, Minato with having FTG is pretty much a given that he'd be able to teleport out of it. But for the sake of the video, let's just say that they were able to trap Minato in the barrier. And let's say for some reason that the barrier itself somehow restricted Minato's ability to use FTG, at least when it comes to teleporting out of the barrier. Well, for starters, this is a Hokage role reversal, right? So obviously that means the third coffin that Orochimaru was attempting to summon in this fight with Hiruzen would be Hiruzen this time and not Minato. Now, again, keep in mind guys that I'm giving a lot of leeway to Team Orochimaru here, because I'm aware that given the fact that Hiruzen was able to stop the third coffin from summoning fast enough, Minato would have no problem doing the same. Heck, I'd even argue that it wouldn't even get that far. Minato might be able to prevent Orochimaru from using Edo Tensei in the first place. But again, I'm trying to put Minato in the worst possible scenario here, within reason of course, and see if he can still come out on top. So again, for the sake of the video, let's say that since it was originally part of Orochimaru's plan, let's throw in Kimimaro in this fight too. And we can say this is healthy Kimimaro, or at least not a severely damaged on his deathbed Kimimaro. To which, if you watch my Sound 5 versus the Ichikatsuki video, I said that you can get a healthy Kimimaro anywhere from the beginning of Shippuden Sasuke to a KCM Naruto clone in terms of scaling. And I think the former is likely the more realistic. The reason I bring this up is that because if we use that particular Kimimaro here, then I think he'd be able to distract just long enough for Orochimaru to use Edo Tensei to summon Hokage. And even if you think Kimimaro couldn't even do that, because I also do believe it's just as likely that he couldn't, let's say for the sake of conversation that he could. So ultimately we have Minato versus Orochimaru, Kimimaro, and then Edo, Hashirama, Tobirama, and Hiruzen. And I know I've been saying I want to put Minato in the worst possible scenario here, but I also said within reason and within the confines of the arc. Meaning, obviously, that the Edo Hokage here are going to have the same Edo nerve that they had in this arc. Because if we use the Edo Hokage from the War arc on top of Orochimaru and Kimimaro, I mean, forget it. Minato is not walking away from that. Now, real quick before I forget, let's go back to how Minato would deal with the problem of Shukaku. Well, I think he'd obviously worry about Naruto first and foremost. So if he doesn't already notice that Kakashi got him to safety, then I could see Minato using a clone to do it, you know, assuming Naruto would already have an FTG mark on him anyway. In regards to Shukaku, I could see Minato using a clone and then using Gamabunta and teleporting him away, similar to how he did with Kurama during the Nine Tails attack. and probably teleporting him somewhere outside the village, similar to where Naruto fought Gaara. And at that point, he'd probably just have the clone or Kakashi or someone else go and find Jiraiya, since Jiraiya was already helping to fight Orochimaru snakes, and have him go and help Gamabunta fight Shukaku. Like, Minato or whoever would be like, yeah, these giant snakes are a problem, but we have an actual tailed beast causing just as much damage, if not more, and that needs to be taken care of first. I think we can all agree that if Naruto was able to beat Gaara with Gamabunta's help, Jiraiya should definitely be able to as well. Maybe you could say that given the surprise attack on Minato from Orochimaru himself and then the whole Sound 4 barrier thing, that Minato wouldn't have enough time to summon a clone and send it to Kakashi or Jiraiya or whatever. If that's the case, Minato can tell the Anbu Black Ops members that were watching in the fight with Hiruzen to go and tell Jiraiya the situation. One way or the other, Jiraiya is their best bet to take Shukaku down if Minato has to deal with Orochimaru. Since I imagine that the order of Minato or Kakashi or both, Naruto and Sasuke would not be playing a part in this fight, as in, they're not going to be fighting Gaara. When it comes to what Naruto and Sasuke will be doing in this scenario, well, it's tough to say. There's really only 3 possible things I can think of. One would be to track down Jiraiya and Gaara and provide Jiraiya with any kind of backup. Obviously, Jiraiya wouldn't need it, and as I said, Minato or Kakashi would have told them not to track down Gaara just to keep them safe. But I mean, Sasuke was already determined to hunt down Gaara in the main series in order to finish their match, I guess. So you could probably say that him going is kind of set in stone anyway, and of course this means Naruto will follow suit. Another option is to find Temari and Kankuro and try to take care of them, which could still happen. But if we assume Shino still lives in the scenario, since he too was in the arena at the time of the invasion, then he'll likely do the same thing Sasuke was going to do with Gaara, as in track down Kankuro to finish their match. And for the most part, I can't see their fight between them going too much different, unless we say that, you know, having their fight be in a village would give Shino more of an edge due to him being more familiar with the location or something, but that's about it. Maybe we can even say that this is a 2v3 between Temari and Kankuro versus Naruto, Sasuke, and Shino. And I think we can all agree that Temari and Kankuro would lose that fight. If we exclude Shino from this, then we can say it's a 2v2 between Naruto and Kankuro and Temari and Sasuke. And we already saw Temari versus Sasuke, so I can't see it being too much different either. But Naruto versus Kankuro would actually be an interesting fight. Now obviously, if Naruto can just use the Nine-Tails chakra on the spot, then he'll probably win. But if we say that it's just normal Naruto, then I actually think Kankuro might have an edge. Naruto isn't used to fighting long-range opponents, let alone puppet masters, and some of Crow's abilities even threw Shino off a couple times. So with the advantage of range, the Crow's weird mechanisms, plus the poison, Kankuro might have what it takes to take Naruto down. But this is all assuming Naruto wouldn't just summon 100 clones at the beginning of the fight or something. Then I could see Naruto pulling out a win or even a draw at worst. Though, depending on how long it takes Sasuke to beat Temari, Sasuke could go back up Naruto also. Either way, Naruto might quote-unquote lose the fight, but he wouldn't die, at least I don't think. Since Shino was able to survive long enough for his dad to come and help him save him from the poison, I imagine Sasuke could get help from someone like Kakashi or whoever to save Naruto in time. If Naruto and Sasuke don't either end up going to where Jiraiya is, or fighting Kankuro and Temari, then the only other alternative I see is them fighting the Sound shooting at the battle arena along with the other Leaf Jonin. Which, like with Jiraiya, the Jonin probably won't need their help, but it'd be good experience for both Naruto and Sasuke. I guess the only other alternative I could see happening, and albeit I think it's the most unlikely, is that if Kabuto were to spot Sasuke during the invasion and try to take him, since capturing Sasuke was also one of the Orochimaru's objectives in the invasion. Now, assuming Naruto would be with Sasuke, this would divulge into a 1v2, and I'm not entirely sure how it would go. Off the top of my head, I went with Kabuto, as he stated a couple times to be at least relative to Kakashi, but then I kind of pushed back on this, if only because, when it comes to Sasuke at least, Kabuto would not be fighting with killer intent, as he obviously wouldn't want to kill Sasuke. Now, if we go ahead and give Naruto the benefit of the doubt and say he's able to access the same Nine-Tails chakra he had in the fight with Neji and Gaara, like on the spot, combined with the full power Sasuke here versus a Kabuto who would be holding back, could they win? Again, even with Kabuto holding back, I'd still probably give it to him, but I could see Naruto and Sasuke possibly scraping by with a W. Like, Naruto would have to summon hundreds of clones at the beginning of the fight to distract Kabuto while Sasuke sets up a Chidori or something. Like, that's really the only play they would have. But Kabuto was somewhat able to tank the Rasengan from Naruto at point blank range in the Tsunade rescue arc, so I'm not too sure if Chidori would be able to get the job done. Like, he was quick enough to preemptively heal himself before the Rasengan had made contact, so he could do the same thing with Chidori here. But he also did state that even with his healing, the damage was too much. So I don't know. Maybe it could have been due to him fighting for a while against Tsunade, Shizune, and Naruto, and it exhausted a good bit of his chakra. Plus, the Chidori attacks in a different way than Rasengan, like it pierces its targets, whereas the Rasengan is more of a brute force type of attack. So maybe if Sasuke lands it directly at his heart, or if he, chops his head off. But other than that, I don't think they have too many options. Like I said, it's tough to say. Scaling wise, I'd give it to Kabuto more often than not, but I could potentially see Naruto and Sasuke coming out on top with high difficulty, especially if they can use the type of teamwork that they used against Zabuza or something. At best, they could secure a draw to make Kabuto cut his losses since he can't exactly fight all out anyway and just make him retreat. Anyway, so then that just leaves Minato versus Orochimaru. Now, right off the bat, since the Edos will be nerfed, Minato will already have the speed advantage from the start, since if we're using the same Edos from the specific arc, then Tobirama will not have Flying Raijin, as he didn't use it in that fight. So Minato will have a much higher chance of getting the killing blow on the Edos. Now, I don't want to be too dismissive of the Edo Hokage here, and granted, Minato will be fighting a couple more opponents than Hiruzen had to, in the case of Edo Hiruzen and Kibimaru, and Orochimaru if he participates. But if Old Man Hiruzen was somehow able to get Edo Hashirama and Tobirama sealed while he was pretty much almost out of chakra, Minato should be able to do the same thing. At bare minimum, he'll have just as much difficulty doing so as Hiruzen did. Now, I think the honest best chance for Orochimaru's team here is that if Tobirama or Hashirama, whichever one it belongs to, because it was Tobirama in the anime, but it was Hashirama in the manga, if either one of them can use the Infinite Darkness Genjutsu, and then right after Kibimaru uses the Bracket Dance, they could potentially kill Minato, if not severely damage him. But then the counter to that is Minato having Sage Mode. Now, if you want to take Minato's word for it and say that he might not have enough time to gather the Sage energy in order to enter Sage Mode before any of the Edo Hokage or Kibimaru can blitz him, then the Infinite Darkness Jutsu might pose a challenge here. But if we go off from what we've seen, which is Minato being able to enter Sage Mode on the spot, then maybe you can even say that he'd be able to gather just enough Sage energy to be able to sense where everyone is at. Then if that's the case, Minato should be okay here. Even if you want to say that his usage of Sage Mode is anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes at most, that'll still be enough time to get either one or both of the Edos off the field to get rid of the Genjutsu. And I mean, not to hype Minato up too much, but you could argue that he may or may not even need Sage Mode, as in, if Old Man Hiruzen could somehow eventually locate Hashirama and Tobirama while he was caught in the Genjutsu, Minato using clones should be able to manage that as well. Though with the added pressure of the Edo Hiruzen and Kibimaru, you might be able to say that this would pressure him into needing to enter Sage Mode. If we really wanted to give Minato some help here, that is, if you felt like it was needed, he could also summon Ma and Pa for extra backup, especially in regards to the Infinite Darkness Jutsu. But I'll understand if y'all think that's giving Minato too much here, especially considering how we've never seen Minato summon Ma and Pa or rely on their help in any kind of fight. But given that it's conversely the worst case scenario for Minato, I could also see it being just as fair. But if we say for a second that we don't use Ma and Pa and say Minato wouldn't have time to enter Sage Mode, I could see him losing the advantage here, especially if Orochimaru himself actually enters the fight. Because there was a couple of times in the fight with Hiruzen that Orochimaru just kind of let Hashirama and Tobirama do the fighting, and Orochimaru was just kind of sitting on the sidelines. Mostly because it was like a psychological warfare, like he thought it was funny to see Hiruzen fight his predecessors. But if he and Kibimaru chose to try and jump Minato along with Edo Hashirama, Tobirama, and Hiruzen, while Minato's caught the Genjutsu, I could see Minato being overwhelmed here, especially if Hashirama uses Deep Force Emergence or Kibimaru uses the Bracket Dance to hinder Minato's movements while he's in the Infinite Darkness. Now, what I will say for Minato in this case is that if he's marked any or all of his opponents before the Infinite Darkness Jutsu, then this won't matter. And given how fast Minato is, I can definitely see it being a possibility. It would just depend on how soon into the fight that they would cast the Infinite Darkness Jutsu. Now, let's rewind for a second and say that Minato can enter Sage Mode in time. Then, if that's the case, it'll be just like how I said earlier, and Minato can just feel out the battlefield for his opponents, at the very least, to find out whichever one is using the Infinite Darkness Jutsu. And once that's taken care of, I don't think Minato will have too much of an issue dealing with the rest. And this whole scenario with the Infinite Darkness Jutsu can also be helped with the fact that Minato can use FTG in conjunction with the Shadow Clone, as even if he's caught, he can use the clones to do fake outs and teleport, even more so if Minato is in Sage Mode. And I think this goes without saying that this is even more in Minato's favor if we do allow Ma and Pa. And luckily, with Minato being an expert in sealing jutsu, he won't have to resort to using the Reaper Death Seal in order to seal the Edos. He'll likely have a sealing jutsu similar to the ones that each division in the War Arc had in order to seal their Edo opponent. Even if you want to say that Minato wouldn't have the exact same one, given the fact that these Edos would be weaker than the ones Kabuto used in the War Arc, that any sealing jutsu would be effective. And at that point, it would just be Orochimaru and Kimimaro versus Minato, and I think we could say that Minato would be able to deal with them. I do think that the combo of Orochimaru and Kimimaro could put up a fight, especially depending on how much chakra Minato has or hasn't used by this point. But I'd still give it to Minato to win. Absolute worst case scenario for Minato in this particular part of the fight is that he would need to do what Hiruzen did and use the Reaper Death Seal and to kill Orochimaru. And of course, meeting himself as well. And with Minato being younger and in better condition than Hiruzen was, I think we could also agree that he'd be able to quickly seal Orochimaru's soul. But again, that's the worst case scenario. Like, I don't even think it gets that far. I don't want to sound too dismissive of the Edo Hokage, but with how nerfed they're going to be here, I just don't really know if they provide Minato too much trouble without the infinite darkness jutsu. For example, without being trapped in the dark, if Hashirama used the D4 Subvergence or if Kimimaro used the Bracken Dance, with FTG, Minato can still avoid them. Assuming he's going to have anywhere from 10 to 20 FTG kunais like we usually see. And even worse, or better in Minato's case, the extra trees and the bones on a battlefield will just provide Minato extra platforms to place an FTG mark on. If Tobirama had the FTG himself here, I'd say they give Minato more trouble with or without the infinite darkness jutsu and being nerfed, because then Tobirama can place marks on his teammates to get them out of the line of fire, so to speak. But if we did that, then I would definitely have to give Minato a Ma and Pa for extra backup. And even give Minato a couple of the medium-sized toads like how Gawankishi was during the Pain arc. Now, of course, this is all assuming the situation gets this far from the start, as in what I think is the more realistic outcome of this whole scenario. Because I think if we take away the leeway from Team Orochimaru that I've been giving them, then for one thing, there's a very good chance that Orochimaru doesn't have enough time to use Edo Tensei in the first place, thereby already lowering his win rate. But even if we say that he can still summon the Hokage, if we remove the restriction of Minato not being able to use FTG to teleport out of the barrier, then there's nothing stopping Minato from sending each of the Hokage away with FTG, sealing them, and coming back to deal with what's left. And of course, this means that the barrier itself is rendered useless since Minato can just bypass it completely. And if that's the case, there's also nothing stopping any of the other Jonin like Kakashi and Guy from coming to give Minato some backup. And not to ramble too much, but this is all assuming that the barrier is launched in the first place. Because I doubt Orochimaru would be able to actually grab a hold of Minato like he was able to do to Hiruzen and keep him held while the Silent Four put up the barrier. Like, the second Orochimaru attempts to grab hold of Minato, Minato can just teleport. Or better yet, he can use that opportunity to place an FTG mark on Orochimaru right there. And just like that, Orochimaru is already on a losing edge. With all this in mind, I think it's safe to say that Orochimaru would definitely need to plan this attack differently, but it's tough to say how else he would do it. Maybe needing to take Naruto hostage or something like that, but even then I think the situation would result the same way because I'm going to assume Naruto would have an FTG mark on him anyway. I guess the only other things I would change in this what if invasion is that the Anbu who would be spectating Minato's fight would actually do something more useful and go and try to take care of the giant snakes that were attacking the village. That way Jiraiya could go deal with Shukaku without any worry. Especially if we consider, for a fun fact, and put a little twist on this, that the Anbu that were spectating Hiruzen's fight were the same Anbu that were actually putting in some work against the pain summons in the Pain arc. Like, if we say for a second that that is the case, then the giant snakes might actually be taken care of relatively quickly because those Anbu were putting in some work. So I think the only other change I could and would make to this scenario in the confines of, realism here is that the Anbu would have much more agency than they already did. Now, some Anbu members did have agency within the arc, like some of them were actually putting in work against the Sand and Sound Ninja within the village, but when it comes to the giant snakes, I think if we use the same Anbu that were putting in some work in the Pain fight against the Pain summons, I think the snake summons would actually be taken care of relatively quickly. But again, apart from that, I know I seem a little bit too dismissive of the Edo Hokage, which I don't mean to be, but again, someone like Minato, especially if we give him Sage Mode, if we give him Ma and Pa, I think he has the edge more often than not. But even if we don't give him that, I think he still can take it. Now, again, like I said earlier, if you wanted to give Tobirama the Flying Raijin, and if you wanted to give Kimimaro a higher scaling, like his KCM Naruto clone scaling in the War Arc, then I think they could beat Minato, possibly. They give him a lot more trouble for sure, and maybe it come out to a draw to where Minato has to resort to the Reaper Death Seal. But I just feel more often than not, Minato would take this. But let me know in the comments what you guys think. Let me know in the comments if I missed anything as far as the scenario or in the versus battle itself. Be sure to like the video if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, click the bell for more notifications. Until my next one, like me snow, out.